Hi, it's Danielle. Welcome to my perfume journal. So, if somebody said to me, you can take an all expenses paid trip to anywhere in the world and you can do the one thing that you've always wanted to do, I would say without hesitating, take me to the Osmotheque. The Osmotheque is basically the largest scent archive, museum, library in the world. It's a nonprofit organization that was created to preserve discontinued or reformulated perfumes in their original compositions, protecting them in very careful conditions. They are kept in complete darkness and they use argon gas to maintain a consistent protective environment and temperature for the perfumes. So perfume formulas are donated to the Osmotheque, and then the Osmotheque recreates the perfumes. If a raw material is no longer available, they just won't remake the formula because they want the perfume to be a true recreation of the original formula. And members of the public can visit the Osmotheque at very specific times of year, or they can contact the Osmotheque about making an appointment. I've only ever seen a few people in the general fragrance world or in the general public be able to do this. So I don't know what the conditions are for being accepted for a visit, but the Osmotheque has also been present at fragrance conventions like Essence in Milan to provide education and information to attendees. And then they have like kind of a fun take on fundraising for a nonprofit. They offer the opportunity to adopt a perfume by donating money to their cause. So there are over 4,000 perfumes in total in the library, and over 800 of them no longer exist. I mean, imagine being able to smell all of these perfumes in their original formulations. It would be like a total dream come true, and that is why that would be my unicorn vacation choice. But since a private visit to the Osmotheque is probably not going to be in the cards for me anytime soon, I have made my own little Osmotheque in my own little perfume cabinet to tide me over. And what you see on the screen in front of you is my own little personal Osmotheque. So what I have in here is a small collection of perfume samples and decants that I consider to either be referential or special in some way. Many of them are in their original or close to original formulations. So I keep all of these perfumes on hand in this little protected case so that I can either dip the end of a blotter into them from time to time or spray a little drop on my hand and be able to inhale their significance or study them and enjoy the history of these perfumes. So today what I thought I would do is share just a little handful of the perfumes that I keep in my own little at-home perfume Osmotheque. And as I talk through these perfumes, I'll also share if they are still currently in production or not. Okay, so first up, I have a little section of vintage classics, and I'll talk about two of them that are in my little Osmotheque. So the first is Jardins de Bagatelle from Guerlain. I have little vials in the vintage EDT and EDP concentrations. So this perfume came out in the early 80s in 1983, and I totally remember that there was a very sort of like risque magazine ad for this perfume that featured a woman in a gauzy dress with a lace bodice that was like completely see-through. And I am definitely sure that I did not see this in my 17 magazine subscription that I had at the time, but probably when I went to the public library and I would flip through like the Cosmopolitan magazines, they had much more like adult kind of ads. Anyway, this perfume pays a bit of an homage to the gardens of the Chateau de Bagatelle outside of Paris from the time of Marie Antoinette. And that garden is really known best for its hundreds of varieties of roses, but this perfume is really about tuberose. Tuberose in this perfume is flanked by a whole host of other white flowers. There's neroli, gardenia, jasmine, and it has this bright, sparkling opening and a really light, woody base. So this perfume is like flowers, flowers, flowers. It's like sticking your face into a spring or a summer bridal bouquet. And I think this perfume is really so beautiful. The bottle from the 1980s was gorgeous. It was like cut glass and very geometric, which is kind of an odd style for this particular perfume. I sort of imagine this perfume in more of like a L'air du Temps style bottle, but whatever, it was the 80s, so we got this cut glass geometric thing with. So this perfume is still in production in both EDT and EDP concentrations, and it's part of Guerlain's Les Légendaires line. And now it comes in the classic Art Nouveau inverted heart bottle. And so because most of my reference points or entry points for perfume were in the 70s and 80s, I also wanted to add a dram of Joy from Jean Patou to my little Osmotheque. So this perfume came out decades before I even learned of it in the 1930s, but in the 80s, I would say it had a bit of a resurgence. I mean, I don't think this perfume ever actually went out of style, but it kind of took on a life of its own in the 80s because it was being hailed as the most expensive perfume ever made. And the 80s were a time of excess and yuppies and money making, and so everybody was talking about Joy. I guess you could say this was like the 80s version of hype. It was spread by word of mouth, and that's just kind of like how things went viral back then. They would pass from person to person. They would start somewhere, probably like in a TV or a magazine ad, and then the word would spread from person to person to person. So Henri Almarat is the perfumer for Joy, and from what I can tell, he created perfumes just exclusively for Jean Patou. And I still remember going to the mall to smell this perfume and thinking it was really something special, probably because of all the hype around it. And I have this super distinct memory of thinking to myself as I was standing at the perfume counter that this perfume smelled like gold and diamonds. I didn't really have a vocabulary at the time to understand that it had an aldehydic opening or an animalic civet note, or that the beautiful florals were coming through, rose, ylang ylang, a buttery orris. To me, it just smelled like gold and diamonds. And so this perfume, when I smell it in this little vintage dram, it instantly transports me back to that very special moment of smelling the most expensive perfume in the world. So if you would get on the elevator with me, we will go to the next floor of my little Osmotheque. And this floor includes some of the less expensive vintage perfumes that I like to be able to sniff in their original format now and then. So the first one is Halston, a little vintage dram of Halston that I got from my friend Allie. So thank you so much, Allie, for sharing this with me. So of all the perfumes that I'll talk about today, this is the only one that I have an actual bottle of, and that's Halston, that was created for Halston in 1974 by Bernard Chant. So this is the iconic Halston bottle designed by Elsa Peretti. She was one of Halston's muses and models. She was a close friend of his, and she actually then went on to be a premier jewelry designer for Tiffany. So this bottle of Halston is the current formulation, which is totally fine. I enjoy wearing it from time to time. And Halston is like one of my most formative perfume memory fragrances and a total icon of perfume history. Like I can just imagine the dance floor of Studio 54 teeming with the sillage of Halston night after night after night in the 70s and 80s. So Halston is a green floral chypre, and what I think sets it apart from other green floral chypres of its decade is this almost syrupy fruitiness of like overripe melon and peach, along with a big heap of creamy sandalwood in the dry down that pairs with that classic oak moss base. So like instead of being very brightly aldehydic or even almost bitter like other green chypres can be, Halston is dramatic in a different kind of way. It feels almost drapey like Halston's fashion designs. I know that's kind of a weird way to describe a perfume, but it really does sort of feel like that. It feels like it just drapes itself over your skin. And the vintage version of this perfume is unbelievably stunning. The second I smelled it, I knew immediately it was like true vintage Halston. When you grow up with really specific scent memories that sort of like burrowed their way into your brain at a very formative time in your life, smelling vintages is kind of like playing Name That Tune. and you are able to guess the song in one note. Okay, so next is a vintage perfume that doesn't hold any really specific scent memories for me personally, but it is unquestionably iconic and recognizable, and that is Emeraude from Coty, created by Francois Coty. So this is another vintage that a perfume friend shared with me, and even though Emeraude has been around since maybe like the 1920s, my vial is probably circa 70s or early 80s, and I am pretty sure that this is the eau de cologne concentration. And I am not saying that because I'm like an expert on this, not at all, not by any means. I could not identify like what vintage version this is just by my nose. But based on the research I've been doing about this perfume, the color of the liquid in my vial and my like vague memories of smelling this in the 70s and 80s, I think I am making my best guess here as to the age of the bottle that my sample came from. So Emeraude is really an interesting perfume. So looking at the notes, which is like bergamot, lemon, orange, rose, ylang ylang, jasmine, vanilla, patchouli, apopanax, benzoin, sandalwood, you would probably expect a powdery floral with some like ambery resinous touches, which it totally is. But then there is this really interesting quality about it that truly does make it smell like the color emerald green, and that is the lemongrass in the opening. So within the powdery floralcy and the ambery nature of this perfume, it has like this bit of green lift to it, and that little bit of green lift is so unique and so gorgeous. And there was a time when Emeraude was like a drugstore cheapie, but I do not see it in production or available anywhere anymore except on eBay at really high prices. So I would say that if you have even like an old drugstore bottle of Emeraude in your possession, hang on to it because it's a treasure. Okay, so next I have a little section of my Osmotheque that I consider to be my unicorn perfumes. They are discontinued perfumes that slipped by me, mostly because of my own financial limitations during the decades when they were released or when they were popular, and now they are no longer in production, and they are very difficult to find and very, very expensive. So I do not have the real Osmotheque's argon gas protection for my little vials, but that is okay. Even if they evaporate, I'll be able to like unscrew the little top of the decant and have myself a little sniff. And this is extra awesome because with the exception of a few select perfumes that I keep a saved search for, and I patiently wait for them to show up at a price I am personally willing to pay, I would not call myself a discontinued perfume collector. And so when I have these like little sample sizes to keep me satisfied in the knowledge that I have smelled or I can still smell a discontinued gem, I am super duper grateful with people who have been willing to share a little bit of them with me. So first up, I have a little collection of original Muglers that were shared with me by wonderful friends. First came the original Angel in 1992. My sister-in-law has a bottle of the OG Angel, so I go up to her bedroom and I huff that star whenever I go over to her house, and it is truly gorgeous. You can see why this was such a groundbreaking perfume. Absolutely stunning, that ethyl maltol fruituli bomb of a perfume. Essentially the first, big gourmand in the perfume industry that took off. So now take the idea of Angel, which is sweeties and patchouli, but make the sweeties Parma violet candies, and what you have is the perfume on the screen, and that is Angel Violette. I did not even know that this flanker existed, and my good friend Jill shared a little bit of this with me, and I am so grateful to have been able to smell this. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Jill. So then after we had Angel, then came Alien, that like otherworldly magic perfume made from jasmine and amber and cashmeran and all of its bazillion flankers. And I do have several little special flanker vials. And out of all of those little flanker vials that I have in my Osmotheque, the one that I love the most, the one that makes me completely weak in the knees, is the one that comes in the butt cheeks bottle, Alien Essence Absolute. So this is one of those perfumes that I leave saved searches for, like little secondhand breadcrumbs, hoping one day a bottle will find me. Always, though, at the right price. So with Alien Essence Absolu, Dominique Ropion has taken the classic Alien and like murred it up. There is this like thick resinous sweetness here that's doubled up with Vanilla Absolute. And as I was thinking about this video, I realized that I think about this Alien flanker the same way that I now feel about Shalimar L'Essence. There is just something about that extra dose of an incredible vanilla, not a sugary sweet vanilla, but a rich, what are they calling it nowadays? Vanilla caviar? Like that kind of a vanilla, like a vanilla bean paste. It is just so deeply heady and intoxicating. And in Alien, along with that myrrh note, I just adore it. It's incredible. So then I cannot talk about my Osmotheque without mentioning the two perfumes I've probably talked about the most on my channel as my two unicorns of all unicorns. But ironically, not two that I keep saved searches for, mostly because they are priced so high that I know I am never going to spend that kind of money on a bottle of discontinued perfume. Like $500? No, that is not, that is not happening. So fortunately, one of these perfumes has just been re-released, so it's only a matter of time before I'm able to finally have a whole bottle of this unicorn perfume. It'll be in its current formulation, and I know that I will be quite happy with that. So let's start with that one. It is Boudoir from Vivienne Westwood, released in 1998 and created by Martin Gras. This perfume is a sweet, powdery, slightly spicy, slightly indolic, woody floral. And it has all the notes to support that profile. It is rose, carnation, marigold, narcissus, jasmine, vanilla, sandalwood, oak moss, cardamom, cinnamon, very vintagey feeling. But all of those notes are just pieces of the whole, and the whole is not just a scent, but a feeling. It is coquettish, it is irreverent, it is seductive, it is glamorous, it's beguiling, it is filthy. It is everything you would want a boudoir to be. Like, it's messy, but everything is in its place. And I would say that this little case of drawers actually became my little Osmotheque when I received this vial of Boudoir. It is just that special. And then sitting right next to Boudoir in my Osmotheque is Midnight Poison. So while the original Poison was one of my signature scents in the 80s, Midnight Poison is by far my favorite of the entire Poison line. So of course that's the one that they discontinued. I actually did not know that I liked rose patchouli until I smelled Midnight Poison. So this is like a deep red rose. It's almost black, but it is not sharp. It is not harsh. It is soft and velvety. And the patchouli in this has never ever been to a Grateful Dead show. It is earthy, but it is never dirty. And then there's a bit of mandarin and vanilla that add a touch of sweetness. And the whole composition of this perfume is like shadowy and mysterious. And it is just very, very special. And then the last section of my little Osmotheque is samples or decants that I kept because there was just something about these perfumes that made me not want to give the samples away, but hold on to them. Kind of like I have held on to certain books that I like to go back to. Is the section that contains perfumes that I would consider to be more modern and even a little bit avant-garde. So I have whole sample sets of original formulations of original collections from like Byredo, Etat Libre d'Orange. I have the whole original collection from Diaz and Durga in here. I have Fleur's original creations, Dead Cool, Henry Rose, Ellis Brooklyn, when they were all like little baby startups before they exploded and ended up in Sephora. So I'll talk about 4 perfumes from this part of my little Osmotheque because they are from brands they are doing or were doing pretty extraordinary things. So the first is a perfume from Frederic Malle before they were acquired by Estee Lauder. It was originally called Synthetic Jungle and now it's called Synthetic Nature, and it was created by Anne Filippo. So I think they changed the name of this perfume because there was like some kind of copyright issue. And in its original formulation, I would say that this is one of the best green scents ever made. Now, I can't really compare the current formulation to what I have in the original formulation because I haven't actually smelled the new one enough to be able to speak to the differences if there are any noticeable ones. But what I can say is that this is a lush, vibrant green perfume. The notes are just basil, lily of the valley, jasmine, and patchouli. But I cannot imagine that there isn't any galbanum in this. It is so, so deeply green. I'm actually holding the vial up to my nose right now, and the cap is on super tightly, and I can totally smell its greenitude. Its greenitude. I just made that up. It is like you just rolled around in every green thing that has ever grown. It's like herbal and aromatic. It's watery. It's even a little bit crunchy. It is like a whole rainforest in this vial. Okay, the next is Dzing from L'Artisan Parfumeur from 1999 by Olivia Jacobetti. So I am sure there are historians out there who can really definitively say when niche perfume houses were like bursting onto the scene. I would say that L'Artisan was one of them. And at the time, I would say that they were making some pretty out of the box stuff. So I feel like Dzing is one of the fragrances that really captured the idea of conceptual perfumery in a way that we hadn't seen too much before. So Dzing is a perfume inspired by the circus. Imagine the kind of creativity it takes to possess a perfumer to be like, hey, you know what people might want to smell like? The circus. And everyone around them goes, yeah, people will definitely want to smell that. And then they all get to work. And then what they come up with is something that literally smells like all of the things that you would associate with the circus. Popcorn, caramel apples, leather, animal poop. It is sweet and sort of nutty and like dusty, dirty, the way that it feels when you're walking around the circus tents. And it's leathery and animalic and maybe even a little bit unsettling. And does it smell bad when you spray it? No, it actually smells really, really good. But do I want to wear this? No, absolutely not. I do, however, want it in my Osmotheque so I can open up my little drawer from time to time and remind myself of all the things that perfume can do and all the things that perfume can be. And finally, there are two perfumes that I have in my Osmotheque that came from artisan perfume houses. My definition of that is a house or brand in which the brand owner and the perfumer are one and the same. So first, I have a little vial of Vivacious from Hiram Green, which is now discontinued from his line, but I think this is one of the most outstanding peppery violet scents. It is unlike any other violet scent I have ever smelled. It leans way more into the stemminess of the violet leaf, but it doesn't leave out the flower either. And Hiram Green does really the most incredible things with naturals, and I think it is an amazing example of natural perfumery that I like to go back to from time to time. And then the last perfume that I'll share is Tubereuse Organique by Christophe Laudamiel from his now retired brand, The Zoo. So I waffled between talking about this perfume and my actual favorite perfume from his line, which is called Dangerous Curves. I should have purchased that when I had the chance. It's a really cool lipsticky doll head floral. But for this video, I ended up choosing Tubereuse Organique because it is such a phenomenal example of the artistry of independent perfumery. So this perfume is an incredibly realistic representation of natural tuberose, but it is crafted from materials that contain no tuberose whatsoever, zero. No tuberose absolute, no tuberose extract, nothing. And yet it is a whole entire tuberose plant in a bottle. This is not the kind of tuberose that you get in other kinds of perfumes. It's not sweet, it's not buttery, it's not bubblegummy, it's not soft. It's green, it's stemmy, it's dewy, and it's a little bit earthy. I think that this perfume is pure alchemy, pure art, but also completely wearable and beautiful to the nose. So there it is, my little Osmotheque, my museum of scents that lives not in Paris, but in a dark, dark drawer in my perfume cabinet. And every now and then I adopt a new perfume to add to the museum, and my visitor guest list is me. It's party of one. And I think the point here is really that a lot of these perfumes, especially the ones that are still in production, they are not sitting on my shelves. Having a sample library or a reference library or a little sample museum is just another way that I enjoy this hobby on my budget, and I keep to my spending limits on bottles in a way that just works for me. Sometimes for me, it is enough to dip a blotter or spray just a drop on my hand to enjoy the beauty of a perfume once, twice, 100 times. I don't have to wear or own everything. Sometimes it's enough just to be able to smell it. So I would love to know, if you were going to build yourself a little Osmotheque, what perfumes would you put in yours? I'd love it if you would share with me down in the comments what your museum would hold. So thank you for taking this little trip with me to my perfume museum. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it. And I thank you so much for spending your time with me, for chatting perfumes with me in the comments. I literally geek out reading all of the comments and everything that you have to say. So I hope you have a really good day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.